I'm not going to sit here for 10 minutes straight and tell you how I was basically jizzing over the packaging for this entire line, because I already did that in the previous video. I made all the jokes. The nips were hard, blah, blah, blah. The packaging is phenomenal, and honestly, if you decide to rip that packaging open and not keep it mint in perfect condition, there will be a SWAT team that should just like pummel you out of nowhere, kind of like that scene in the Transformers film. They should just come out of nowhere, break your windows down, and just arrest you, because that's an absolute crime against humanity. But I'm not going to do that. I guess I've already spent a few seconds talking about the packaging, but I'm not going to do it. I just want to talk about the action figure today. We're talking about Ryu from the Jada Toys line. I already mentioned, or I already reviewed Fei Long, and it was a really great figure. It fell a little bit short in certain aspects, and I kind of wanted to touch on some of those here today. So everything that I said in terms of the shortcomings and the issues that you're going to have are going to apply for Ryu. I don't like the plastic color tone from the head to the body. They're completely different. You can clearly see it. It's very visible. I also don't love the wrist articulation on here. They decided to cover up those joints, make it look less gappy, so you can't really articulate them too well upwards or downwards. They tend to kind of want to get out of their socket. So the wrist stuff, I guess it just depends on your personal perspective, because I've heard the complete opposite against like McFarlane action figures, where the wrists were just too visible and people were losing their minds over. I would rather them be a little bit visible if it means that we're going to get better articulation. So as I said, that issue is still present with this particular figure, but everything else the figure fixes. One of the bigger issues that I had with Fei Long as well was that the extra head sculpt, or the alternate one, didn't really look that different. It was kind of like the one where your homie farts next to you, and then the other head sculpt was like somebody drank all your Mountain Dew face. Like, they were just very similar, and they didn't have enough characteristics to set them apart. Whereas in the Ryu action figure, the two head sculpts, they definitely have some big distinguishing features, and that was something that we really wanted from this figure. The effect piece stand is also very small for his size. He's supposed to be a 6-inch action figure, so the only way that you can really use the effect piece is if he's standing upright. If you want to do like a mid-air type of attack, it's not going to fit very well unless you have an extra stand, and even in that case, you're going to struggle to make it look realistic or make it look displayable. So in my personal opinion, I think this stand should have been a little bit bigger. The other big point of emphasis that I had, huge issues with Fei Long were the ankles. Again, they decided to hide that joint, that articulation, and unfortunately I think it held back his pivoting or his ankle rotation, whereas with Ryu, that is not present at all. This is a perfectly articulated ankle figure, so he can get into those really dynamic, crazy poses while having his foot firmly planted, which is something that Fei Long cannot do. So overall, by the way, I showed the articulation with the actual the gi, or whatever they call it, the suit, just because I feel like that's the way I'm going to display it. I'm sure that his ab crunch is probably a little bit better if you actually removed it. But like I said, for me personally, this is his iconic look, and I just wouldn't imagine it any other way. The figure is bulky, it's thick, but it's still very, very articulated. Love the butterfly joints, love the ab crunch. His head can look up, his sideways tilt, all of that good stuff is visible and present there. It's also worth noting that even though his pants or his gi suit really gets in the way of his knee articulation, or should anyways, the fact that they gave him double jointed knees, and they do a phenomenal job of articulating backwards and forwards, I think it really helped out. Like I said, even though the figure does tend to be thick and bulky in certain areas, the articulation is just never really going to be hindered with this figure. And his overall suit actually has some really, really cool shading on it, some really good texturing. They did not skimp out when it comes down to the body mold for this figure, and I absolutely loved it. So comparing the two, I'll be brutally honest with you guys, Fei Long to me falls incredibly short. Everything, or I should say every issue that Fei Long had, Ryu just came along and fixed it. The extra head sculpt that really looked way too similar to the original one, Ryu fixed it. The ankles, Ryu just has better ankles, better articulation, better pivoting. He can actually lay his foot flat even in really crazy dynamic poses. And I think that his effect piece is just way more functional. Fei Long's effect piece is really heavy and bulky, and even if you can get him into the right position, because of the girth and the heaviness and the weight of his plastic effect piece, it really doesn't allow him to get into those crazy poses, and he can't even lift his leg or maintain his leg upright, which is a really big issue, especially if you're going to put Fei Long in that iconic move. So overall, as I said, so far, I know I've only unboxed 2 of these figures, but so far, I think Ryu is head and shoulders above Fei Long. I think this is just an almost perfect figure. There were some minor little issues here and there, but for the most part, this is a figure that at the $25 price point, I think this is as good as it gets. I don't see even Hasbro matching this particular figure. And I know I mentioned this in the previous video, but it's also worth reiterating. Guys, these figures already come with pinless technology, and they're only, what, like maybe 3 to 4 figures into their 6-inch collection. It's incredibly rare, and I think it's just a breath of fresh air to see an OM push the boundaries, push the envelope, even though they've only just barely started to jump into the deep end of making 112 collectibles. But as I said, this to me personally may be the best figure from last year. It's definitely a contender. You have to take into consideration obviously the price points and things of that nature, but this is maybe one of the best figures that I own. I absolutely love it, and if you haven't picked up any Street Fighter action figures, this may be the first one to pick up. There you guys have it. That's my quick little review, my quick little unboxing of the Ryu from Jada Toys. Let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know your comments. Let me know your feedback. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you guys want to see more content, if you guys want to see like the top 5 most expensive playlists, we do have a list where we count down like the top 5 most expensive Marvel Legends out there. Or there are plenty of other videos where I just rant or I unbox figures. So go ahead and check out our channel. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Stay safe out there. Continue collecting. And I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you.